Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Bigger Boat podcast. We're the movie podcast that goes through Steven Spielberg's back catalogue one by one, and today we are talking about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. But we have a very special guest with us today to talk about a film in which our hero gets repeatedly humiliated and embarrassed by his father. It's my dad, Tim.
Junior. Thank goodness we had a 2-hour rehearsal.
That joke belongs in a museum.
As do I, apparently.
Well, is it true that this is the only reason you wanted to be on this podcast is because you wanted to broadcast your Sean Connery impression to the world?
Yes. Absolutely.
Oh, it's not Sean Connery.
No, it's my actual dad.
Oh, right.
Cheeky.
And you've heard him already. As always, I'm joined by a man who's got friends in every town and village from Basingstoke to Yeovil. He speaks a dozen languages, knows every local custom. He blends in, he'll disappear, and you'll never see him again. With any luck, he's done the podcast already. It's Joey.
I'm so sorry. Does anyone understand a word I'm saying?
Hey, Joey.
Hello.
How are you?
I've never seen this film before.
How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Had a good week?
Yes, it's absolutely flown by. I've actually been doing podcast things. So if you're listening to our podcasts, I've done my job.
But yeah, it's been a good week. We got very excitingly, we got followed on Twitter by the guy who wrote one of the Spielberg encyclopedias that I've been sort of getting some of the facts from, Ian Freer, which I was very excited about.
That is very cool.
It is very cool. And we should probably give a shout out as well to Pauline Webb, who has been liking and retweeting all of our stuff on Twitter.
Yes, my
and
colleague.
It's very much appreciated, so thank you, Pauline.
And the police have been called.
Yeah, exactly. It's getting a bit weird now. Dad, normally what we do on the podcast is we ask you a little bit about what the last film is you watched.
Okay.
Can you remember?
No, actually, interestingly...
Because it's difficult to remember things at your age, isn't it?
It is indeed, yes. Sorry, where are we? Yeah, I watched, actually, The Spy Game. And that
the Robert Redford film.
Yeah, fantastic. One of my favourite ones. And it hasn't actually been available on download or whatever it is for a long time. So I was surprised to see it on Netflix.
Yeah.
So I saw that the other day. Excellent.
It's such a good film.
It is a brilliant film.
Have you seen it, Joey?
I have. You lent it to me.
Did I?
Yeah,
Okay. It must have been on DVD then.
It wasn't DVD. Remember those?
Oh, yes. No, I thought it was brilliant. And I thought Brad Pitt was great in it. And I like Robert Redford. I think he's excellent. No, if anyone wants to see it, it is on Netflix. It's absolutely brilliant.
Well worth watching. I remember you introduced it to me, and I'd never heard of it before. When did it come out? Early noughties?
Probably. What does that mean?
I think it was...
Turn of the century, if I remember.
Okay.
Turn of the century.
Turn of the century.
It's probably around then, I think.
Okay, brilliant. No, it was really good.
Yeah, okay.
Well, Brad Pitt looked quite young. So.
Yeah.
And Angelina wasn't on the scene, so...
No, okay. What about you, Joey? What was the last film you watched?
I watched a film which I'd heard a bit about, but I hadn't actually sat down to watch. Mirror Mask. Have you ever heard of it?
Is that the one? It's a stop motion.
It's not quite
Is
stop
it
motion. It's a very...
Does Rob Brydon do a voice in it?
Yes, he's in it.
Yes. Okay.
It's not Ronnie Corbett, is it? Okay.
And Gina McKee.
Okay.
Well, I think the reason why I'd heard about it is a lot of people who worked on it went to where I studied film was Bournemouth, and a lot of those guys worked on it, but a few years before I got there.
Yeah.
So the editor of it, like Nicholas Gaster, he came into our university and sort of like gave us critiques about our editing on our films and all that kind of stuff.
What's it about?
It's very much like, it's based on it was written by Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, okay.
If that gives you any inkling.
Yeah.
He also wrote Coraline, if you've ever seen that.
I have really liked Coraline.
So it's very dark. It's kind of an Alice in Wonderland type thing.
Sure.
But personally, I have to say, it didn't quite gel for me. It's actually made or distributed by the Jim Henson Company and things.
Okay.
And there wasn't quite enough creature effects and stuff for me. I was hoping it was going to be like Labyrinth, but it wasn't quite there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So is it available? Can you watch it on Netflix at all?
Yeah, that's where I was.
It's on Netflix. Okay. Is Rob Brydon any good in it?
He's Rob Brydon.
He's Rob Brydon. Okay. And Rob Brydon was also there.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay.
How about you? Have you seen any films this week?
Well, I tried to, when I was doing some research for this, we've talked a little bit beforehand about movie serials and how that inspired a lot of the Indiana Jones movies that are based on it. I decided to try and watch one of these Republic serials. So Republic was one of the big film studios that made these serials in the 1930s, 1940s. And I watched one called Darkest Africa, which is, I think, their first serial. Well, I actually only watched like the first one of the first serials of it, because they were released sort of every week, I think, in the movie theatres around the time.
Yeah.
And that's where, and there was always a suspenseful ending, which is where the term cliffhanger came from. It came from these serials.
Right.
So I watched one called Darkest Africa. Essentially what happens is it's set in the African jungle. What happens is there's a lion tamer who is living in the jungle.
Right.
He's famous in the villages because he can control all these animals, and he was a real lion tamer, the actual guy. And then he finds this kid in the jungle, this small little jungle child like a Mowgli, who has a gorilla for a friend. He says he'll lead them to this lost village somewhere, which is where they're going to find something, and then they get pursued by these treasure hunters who want to track them down. But it's absolutely bonkers in the fact that the village that they come to, there's like these Batmen who come, and the guards are actual Batmen with wings and bats, and they fly around and come onto the screen. All the fight sequences look like... Do you remember that YouTube video of that lightsaber kit, or the thing on Arrested Development with George Michael and the lightsaber trying to practice his lightsaber moves? That's all the fight sequences. They look just like that.
Oh, really?
And the little kids, it's got this really weird sort of... He looks like an adult with a child's body. It looks very strange. Right. And there's lots of swinging through the jungles from the like in Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, when the guy swings through with all the monkeys.
Yes. Oh, wow, that's really cool.
It's a really odd film, but I'll post a link because you can watch them all on YouTube.
Yeah.
So I'll post a link and see what you think about it.
Yeah, I watched the Flash Gordon ones because I knew that was influence
they did that as well.
Wars.
Yeah. I think that was the same studio, Republic Studios.
Yeah. Because George Lucas had tried to get the rights to the serial of Flash Gordon.
Flash Gordon.
And then got turned down.
Really?
So then that's why he made his own equivalent of it, and that became Star Wars.
Well, they had the bats, didn't they? Had the bat people in the Flash Gordon, didn't they, or something?
Yeah, the villains do sort of fly.
Yeah.
They have it's like a rocket pack.
I didn't remember that. Yeah, that's true.
Led by Brian Blessed in the 80s movie.
Who's alive?
Flash.
But yeah, so the serials are really interesting. I know, yeah.
Yeah, because they are a big influence on both Star Wars and Indiana Jones.
Yeah, so I'll post a link. There's a YouTube channel that seems to dedicate itself to some of the Republic and Columbia movie serials, and you can watch them all.
And the reason why this is possible is in the 30s, I read somewhere that it's very common that a lot of households would go to the cinema 3 or 4 times a week. So you'd have a cliffhanger type serial at the beginning and a couple of other little cartoons, Warner Brother cartoons or whatever, and then you'd have a double feature. Yeah,
it was a Saturday matinee, wasn't it? Yeah. Because because that company that made them, Republic, seemed to shun major studio productions, just seemed to focus on just making the serials. Yeah. And that's how they made most of their money. And then Columbia and Universal did them as well.
Yeah. I mean, this is how the Disney company started, really. The Disney company started in I think Walt Disney's garage or his uncle's garage or something, and then that was the idea. Is he's had a little cartoon which would go at the start of each of these big double features and stuff. Yeah, and it's clearly money in it because most people have heard of the Disney company now.
Cool. Oh, did I tell you what I did this week? No one asked.
No.
Well, thanks very much.
So we're not interested, but what did you do?
I think I saw Michael J. Fox in a garden centre.
What?
Yeah. Well, I'm not exactly sure. It might have been him. He had his Back to the Futures. You're welcome.
Well, we've set the standard.
I like that joke. And it was told to me by my sister-in-law, Fran. So blame her.
And the number of likes has gone down to 2.
I thought the idea of having your dad here to do dad jokes was that your dad would say them.
I wanted to out-dad my dad joke.
You're welcome.
I learned from the best. I don't know if you've heard, but we do a quiz most weeks as well.
Let's go for it.
Let's go for it. All right.
What's the prize?
This is the...
Humiliation.
Yeah, exactly. Hubris. This is the last Crusade. It doesn't really work, does it?
No, it's a bit of a stretch.
A bit of a stretch. Okay. So what I'm going to ask you to do, write down your answers. Right, okay. So, first one. What was the name of the Christopher Columbus script for Indiana Jones 3, which was scrapped in favour of using the Holy Grail? Okay, fine. Joey, what have you put? Because you've actually written something.
Are we going to answer...
Yeah, let's do it as we go along.
Was it Indiana Jones and the Monkey King?
Correct. Yes. Actually, I want to talk about the Monkey King in a little bit. So,
because the original script was going to be about a haunted house.
Yes, and that is incorporated in the Monkey King script. Right.
Wrong.
So 1 point to Jerry. Number 2. Dad hates games, but he really hates them.
I hate winning them all the time.
How many years senior is Sean Connery to Harrison Ford?
12.
12. Correct.
Is it 12?
Yeah.
I put 4.
4. That's got it right because you looked on your notes.
I did.
Okay, 1 each. Who did George Lucas and Spielberg hire as an uncredited writer to bolster the dialogue between Indiana Jones and his father?
I know.
I know this.
Go on.
Should we say it together?
Tom Stoppard.
Correct. Very good.
He got paid 120 grand
Did he actually?
dollars,
I didn't know how much he got paid.
and then after it was such a success, he got $1 million bonus.
Did he actually?
He did. I had a chat with him. No, he did. Yeah, no, I read that somewhere.
Wow.
That's because he was the scriptwriter for Empire of the Sun, wasn't he? So,
Yes.
And this is directly after Empire of the Sun.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the name of the ancient Jordanian city where they filmed the final scenes?
It was also a Blue Peter dog name.
Ship?
Correct.
I want to say like Persia or something.
No, Petra.
Petra, that's it.
And I saw Dad had written that down. So
I'm
well
winning.
done.
I'm winning. Aren't
You
I?
are. You.
That's the main thing.
And the last Holy Grail themed question. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? There are 2 correct answers to this. The quiz was going to be, what is your name? What is your favourite colour?
Okay.
What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
65 miles an hour.
No.
31 miles an hour.
I would have accepted either 24, which is the answer according to Google, or European or African swallow.
Right.
If you just said a European or an African swallow, you would have got double points.
Oh.
Sorry. Don't know your Python. Fine. I think Dad won that one.
I think I did.
Right. So Joey, you mentioned Indiana Jones and the Monkey King.
Yes.
Have you seen the script for it?
I haven't seen the script for it. I read the basic synopsis of it.
Because I'm going to post a link to this because I found the leaked script
Oh, you
of
did?
this
I would
online.
love to read it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So that script came onto the internet in around in the mid 90s,
Oh, right.
and everyone thought that they're planning a new Indiana Jones film because there was a typo at the top of the script that said first draft 1995,
Oh, wow.
and it was actually meant to say 1985 because this was preparing for the third one. But so this sparked huge debate in the mid 90s that this script was going to be the 4th Indiana Jones film.
Wow.
Yeah.
I kind of wish it was. Who said that?
So we'll post a link for it. You can so find us on the Twitter page, and we'll post a link to it. But yeah, it's a really interesting sort of plot because they didn't really know. I guess because this is the third Indiana Jones film. Remember, you said during your Raiders episode that George Lucas had lied to Steven Spielberg, saying, "Yeah, we know the plot for all 3 of the Indiana Jones movies," because he didn't really want to sign in for a trilogy, did he?
No. Spielberg had to drop out of directing Big to make this.
And Rain Man.
And Rain Man, yeah.
He was going to direct both of them, was he?
Well, I had an option of those. Yeah.
Did you know Big was written by Spielberg's sister?
Yes, I did know that actually. Yeah.
So it's going to be a sibling
A sibling one, yeah.
adventure, but no.
But the ideas for it, so they didn't really know what direction they were going to go with this Indiana Jones. I know Spielberg felt that Temple of Doom, looking back, was a bit too dark.
Yeah,
And
even then.
Even then,
Only
yeah.
a few years after having made it, yeah.
It didn't have that sort of lightness, that sort of it lost a bit of fun, I think, because.
Well, bearing in mind, I said Poltergeist was the one he did before, so what I might now say is wrong. I
fine.
read
Yeah.
that he was worried that because the Holy Grail, Monty Python had come out, 10, 14 years before, he was worried.
He associated the Holy Grail with Monty
so
Python,
he
and
was
therefore,
worried that people-
Oh, that's why he didn't want to do it.
That's why he didn't want to do it, yeah. So George Lucas had the idea of a haunted house sort of adventure, and he'd even commissioned a screenplay initially from Diane Thomas, who was the woman who wrote Romancing the Stone, which itself was a sort of Indiana Jones pastiche, wasn't it?
Yeah.
By Bob Zemeckis. And then eventually there was a script that came from Christopher Columbus, which incorporated the haunted house elements, and then this Chinese legend of this called Garden of Immortal Peaches, I think. That was called Indiana Jones and the Monkey King, or Indiana Jones and the Garden of Life. They hadn't quite settled on the title yet. And that incorporated the first sort of pre-credit scene was going to be the haunted house stuff. And then they were going to move on to the main adventure itself. But yeah, like you said, Dad, Indiana Jones didn't really want to revisit a poltergeisty thing again because he'd done that a few years beforehand. And he was cautious about the whole Holy Grail stuff. if you have a look at the Indiana Jones and the Monkey King, it is really interesting. There's the main character who sets him off on this adventure is this African pygmy called Tiki, and I think it ends up going into Africa, like this Darkest Africa serial that I watched. So, and I think they were very, very cautious about the backlash they had from Temple of Doom of how it represented indigenous peoples. Right. The fact they wanted, and they sort of wanted to avoid that entirely.
Like the Scorpion King.
Exactly, but I think...
Did it have Nazis in it at all?
It did have Nazis in it, yeah. There was a Nazi commander called Mephisto, I think his name was, and he was going after this Garden of Immortal Peaches to get, everlasting life, like in the Holy Grail, is what they're trying to do. So but it was very, very supernatural themed. I think they wanted to...
But if you set it in the early 30s, you can't avoid the Nazis, can you?
No, exactly. But I don't think the Nazis was the thing that made them go, actually, no, we shouldn't be doing that. I genuinely think it was probably because they didn't want to represent indigenous people like that, and I think they wanted to move to something that's a bit more grounded in something that people have a bit more awareness of. Everyone knows about the Holy Grail, but not many people know about the Magic Kingdom of Sungwon King, or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
There was a scene where Indiana Jones actually rides a rhinoceros in that through a group of Nazis, which I did quite like. But I don't know how they would have incorporated that into...
I don't know how that would look as well with special effects at that time.
That's true, it would look a bit odd, wouldn't it?
Yeah, like he's on a massive marionette kind of thing and see the strings or something.
Because there were some alternative actors they were going to use
for
Professor Jones in terms of Sean Connery.
Yeah.
So Gregory Peck was potentially going to be one.
Okay.
But in the discussions, they thought, no, it was definitely got to be Sean Connery. And I know Harrison Ford apparently really enjoyed working with him.
Yeah.
And then the Grail Knight was going to be Laurence Olivier.
Was he?
Yeah, but he was in failing health.
Okay. Who did they actually cast as the
I don't know.
I'm not too sure. He doesn't actually do that many other things, but he's just so good in that role.
Same with Alison Dooley, actually. She hasn't had much after The Last Crusade that I'm aware of. No.
She is in one of the episodes of Jim Henson's The Storyteller, Samp Sorrow, which is a retelling of Cinderella.
Okay. No,
with the Ugly Sisters, are played by Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders.
Really?
Yeah.
I've not seen that at all.
Yeah. Oh, you got to check it out.
Okay.
Storyteller is brilliant.
Because the guy who played the Kazim, who was the order that would try to stop him from joining, he originally went for the role of Salah, who was John Rhys Davies got that.
Yeah.
And Spielberg remembered that he'd gone for that role and gave him this role. What's his name?
It's a good memory, isn't it?
Yeah, Malikan.
Yeah. It's good that you remember people from 7 years beforehand. Yeah.
I was just going to mention that apparently, because it didn't seem like Lucas and Spielberg agreed with that much, or it seems like they had quite a few arguments along the various script way.
Yeah.
But eventually, so they decided, it's going to be a father and son story.
Yeah.
As we've mentioned before, when we've done the other two, particularly the first one, he said, yes, it's a great film. Yes, he's a really recognisable, relatable character. But we did also say that as a character, he doesn't actually develop that much. Mm-hmm. He starts and ends knowing the same stuff pretty much.
Yeah.
So I think it was quite a good move for a third one to be slightly different, just give him a bit more depth. I think it was a good idea. Basically.
Yeah. I think the addition of a father figure is something that made him go for this script with the Holy Grail. It's like that's the key. That's what's going to make this different. Which does make sense when, like you said, when it comes to previous Spielberg. If you want to get Spielberg interested in film, you just add daddy issues, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it is really well tied together, isn't it, with the sacred object, with the Holy Grail.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Anything else you want to talk about beforehand, or shall we?
Let's crack on, I think.
Okay. Yeah. We're going to go watch the film now. We will be back shortly. Remember, if you want to watch along with us, please do. I've had a check and you can't get it for free on any streaming services like Netflix, Hulu or Amazon Prime, but obviously you can download it from either iTunes or YouTube or wherever you get your rented movies from. Remember, we will be talking about full spoilers of the movie when we get back, so if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. We will be back shortly.
You have chosen wisely.
Junior?
Anything else you want to say in a short accent?
Right, welcome back. We have just watched Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
We have. Everyone enjoy that?
Yeah,
I did.
Brilliant.
Although this is the second time that Dad's watched this in 24 hours because he got confused about the format.
I watched it last night.
And again.
More chocolates for the wife.
Okay, first question. How does it compare, do you think, with the other Indiana Jones films?
Well, the second one, The Temple of Doom, was just appalling. So it was a great disappointment. But this one I thought was great.
Yeah.
And I thought Sean Connery acted brilliantly.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's
great
actually
at
a good actor, a good character actor.
Really good in this.
Yeah.
What about you,
For
Jimmy?
me, I do actually think, I'm going to say it, for me, it's on a par with the first one.
This is my favourite. I'm going to go one further than
Joey.
Further. This is my favourite Indiana Jones film.
I dip in and out as to like which one's the best one.
Yeah.
But I'm going to settle on it's on a par with the first one.
Okay.
Because you have to give kudos to the first one because it sets everything up.
Yeah.
But it really is very, very good. Such an enjoyable watch.
It's so much fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think the difference is, I think that elevates it for me is the relationship between the interaction between Sean Connery and Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
And that's what Raiders didn't have. It has that extra characterization and it brings a new side to Indiana Jones that the other ones don't do.
Yeah. We actually just had to pause because there's a fly in this room, and it was in the room that we were watching the film for most of the movie. And I thought one of us was going to have to do a balak and sort of swallow it.
But Dad actually just caught it out the midair with his bare hands.
And I was so amazed that Luke got his phone out and took a picture of my amazed face. And it's almost like the Sam Neill shot in Jurassic Park.
It is the wonder shot. It's a shot from below, looking up at an amazing... it's not an amazing face.
Is that because you thought I'm athletic and fat?
Yes.
Okay.
It's exactly what.
It's calling you
so surprising.
It's calling you a massive dinosaur, basically.
Perfect body for radio.
We were saying that I think this works better than the other films because of the relationship between Sean Connery and Harrison Ford.
There is so much going for it. I think it's got the best love interest.
Yeah.
Because she's both intelligent, smart, conniving, important to the plot.
And a Nazi.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, was this an insight to your perfect woman? And then you said, oh, she's a Nazi.
Check. And what do you feel about the Führer? Yeah. Never mind. Almost Full House.
Anyway.
Moving on. Carry on.
And there's the best character relationships between a father and son. Mm-hmm. It's the best object.
The MacGuffin.
MacGuffin.
Yeah.
Everyone kind of knows what the Holy Grail is.
Yeah.
Even more than the Ark of the Covenant. We've got to know what the Ark of the Covenant is, but because of that movie.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Whereas the Holy Grail is something which you seem to inherently know from very young people talk about it.
And Monty Python.
And Monty Python.
Yes, it is. And I think that's why it was the best choice to go for the Holy Grail as the MacGuffin rather than one of the other ones that they were thinking about beforehand. Yeah. I'm not sure how a haunted house, one set entirely in a haunted house, would have worked, and I'm not sure how if the search for what was it, the Garden of Hidden Peaches or something like that, would have worked either.
No,
it doesn't. The idea of a haunted mansion goes against the cynical nature of Harrison Ford's character. He would just be like, "This is smoke and mirrors." The whole time, wouldn't he?
Well, I think it would end up being more like a Scooby-Doo episode, wouldn't it? Someone trying to debunk the Mysteria, and it's actually the guy who did the water slide.
Another thing I really like about this film, which I don't like about Temple of Doom, and I also don't like about the fourth one, is he has too many helpers in those films. Short Round is too much of a help to Indiana Jones. Yeah. This one, he has a little band of quote-unquote helpers, but they're actually a hindrance to him. His dad slows him down. He doesn't. He doesn't help him out. Only towards the end, after all their bickering, the bit where he looks at his dad differently for the first time is the bit with all the seagulls. Yes. And he, uses his initiative with his umbrella to get rid of them and fly up into the engine of that plane. Yeah.
Beforehand, he's not really much use at all.
No, he slows him down, doesn't he?
Yeah. And there's another bit where he helps in the fact that. When he's caught on the tank, but that's more coincidental, isn't it? When the tank suddenly veers away from.
Oh yes, he knocks out the guy who's driving the tank.
Exactly, yeah. But that's So there's only 2 moments where he's actually really helpful. But yeah, you're right.
So it's not a parallel hill. here in terms of you saying about me as a father, are you?
You can read into it however
Just
much
checking,
you want.
Just checking. It's okay.
I don't.
Did you make Luke do his Greek homework when he was young? And
It was all in Latin.
this time, Luke, again, in Greek.
What did you think of the? What did you think of the relationship between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery?
No, I think it was very real, especially for those times, in terms of someone so focused on a passion that he would ignore the children and ignore the child, and I just thought it came across very well.
And I think that was an interesting choice, wasn't it? Because it was more Sean Connery's choice, I think, to play him that way as more of a disinterested father who's lost within his own thoughts and obsessions.
Well, you're searching for the Grail, but you're also searching for the lost relationship, aren't you?
Yeah, well, exactly. I think, that's a definite metaphor there.
Yeah, you get the sense that, they've missed out on so many adventures together because the dad is so bookish and stuff. But then they actually pulled together and they accomplished this one aim together.
Yeah.
But the dad's perception is that it wasn't a problem, but Indy's is as it was, because he said, well, I let you do this, I didn't restrict you, and you have free spirit, and that's not what Indy was looking for.
Yeah, and I think that, like I said, a lot of that was Sean Connery's choice, because it wasn't written that way. It was written as if he'd be a much more... I think the father role there wasn't as much of that in the script, but because of the relationship, it was written more, and then he actively chose it to play it in a very different way to a stereotypical hero, which I think was absolutely the right choice.
And Tom Stoppard was the person that did most of that dialogue between the two of them.
And the dialogue is really snappy between them, isn't it? It is really, really good and quite realistic. Well, it's heightened, but it's very witty and very funny.
Well, it's right, isn't it? It's the right level of coincidental, in the moment.
Yeah.
It's right, it's very character specific.
Yeah.
But they got the facial expressions well.
Yes.
Yeah, they did well.
Yeah.
Venice.
There's so many little moments. The bit that I noticed we really laughed at was, I can't believe what you did. And he's still sort of lingering around while they're trying to get away from their Nazis. And he has to pull him away.
As he's shot to a room full of Nazis. Look what you've done.
Yeah. I can't believe what you've done. Sorry, we're doing more impressions of Sean Connery than you.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I don't think you actually are. Sorry. Okay. Surely you're not.
Sorry, Sean.
Have you... it was so annoying growing up when every time we went to a restaurant, Dad would always order a dessert, and it always just to say sticky toffee pudding.
Oh, really?
And the waiters had no idea what was going on. It was completely out of context. He would have not spoken like this at all, and he would just say out of the blue, "Yeah, I'll have some sticky toffee. That'll be great." And then make the waiters say, "Go on, say it. Say." So what do you want me to say? I want you to say sticky toffee pudding in the Sean Connery. What? Why?
Who is Sean Connery?
Exactly. And this poor waiter ended up going, sticky toffee. The amount of waiter's spit I've had to eat in my dessert because of you.
Good days.
You could at least ask for a martini, shaken, not stirred. Suddenly went a bit American.
Who was that meant to be?
Michael Caine.
Well, actually, that's a great segue.
Okay.
Because...
was that planned? Sorry.
No, it wasn't planned at all.
Just checking.
Can you not tell that this is completely unplanned?
No.
Making others go along, but we always get out of it, like Indiana Jones.
So this, we talked a little bit about at the beginning about Steven Spielberg signed on to Raiders of the Lost Ark because he wanted to make a Bond movie.
I didn't know that.
He had asked Cubby Broccoli a number of times to have a Bond movie just after he'd made Close Encounters.
Great name.
I know, right? But that never came to pass, and George Lucas gave them his idea. It was like, well, this could be your American James Bond. Yeah. And obviously, you said that they thought Gregory Peck would be a reasonable role, was up for casting for Sean Connery, but Spielberg eventually chose his own James Bond to be what his James Bond's dad was.
Yeah. And he did carpentry work in George Lucas's house anyway, didn't he, Harrison Ford?
Did he?
Yeah, Harrison Ford was originally a carpenter.
Was he?
He just happened to get a acting job.
Okay. In American Graffiti. Yeah.
Yeah. He was a struggling actor then, wasn't he? Yeah.
He was.
And then he had to put food on the table because he already had a couple of kids.
Had to make the table.
So he had to make the table, yeah.
Should we talk about the opening sequence?
Yes.
Because I think that's one of the best opening sequences for adventure movies. There's always especially in a lot of Spielberg movies, there's the first 15 minutes is the end of a previous adventure.
Yeah.
It is the conclusion of that, and that happens in all the Indiana Jones films. and it's been echoed in a lot of other sort of adventure movies.
Yes.
This is one of the best, for my money, opening sequences.
But it tries to tell some of the stories from the other ones, doesn't it?
Exactly. There's a lot of callbacks. So you mentioned a few beforehand.
Yeah, about the snakes.
Yeah.
That initially he wasn't scared of snakes.
Yeah.
And then obviously on the circus train he fell into a crate of snakes.
Yeah.
That would frighten anybody, I think, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, these snakes are a bit damp.
And there's a few more callbacks there. River Phoenix uses the whip to try and tame the lion, which is a direct scene from Darkest Africa, that serial that I watched in 1936.
Awesome. I really want to check that out.
Have a look at it. But he accidentally catches himself on the face, which is meant to explain Harrison Ford's chin scar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know how he got that scar in real life?
Car crash, wasn't it?
Yes. He wrapped it around a telephone pole.
Yeah. And there was another callback there as well, wasn't there?
Well, he got given a hat, didn't he?
And he picked up the weapon.
Federer.
The Federer, yeah.
I thought it was a tennis player.
The Roger Federer, yeah.
And then obviously you got the Panama hat with the guy.
Yes.
Yes. Now, this is the one thing I was a bit unsure about, and I've always been a bit unsure about. So there's that constant, the repetition of that line, it's an important artifact, it belongs in a museum.
Yeah.
So he's looking at them thinking, these guys are criminals.
Yes.
So then why, to some extent, does he want to emulate that criminal when he's older, dress the same as him, do his job, essentially? Why does he switch from thinking these guys are criminals to thinking, right, that's my line of work from now on?
I'm not sure he thinks they are towards the end, he realises he's a treasure hunter and he's
getting paid to do it.
He's getting paid to do it. So I think
he doesn't keep it. He gives it to someone else and gets paid for it. And then he talks about Marcus saying, "You take me out to dinner, we're going to talk about my honorarium." So he's getting paid as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think he sort of...
Do you suddenly realise these guys are the treasure hunters, but then it's not up to them to put it in the museum or whatever?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of moral stuff. There's a moral quandary going on in his head, but
that's quite good.
Yeah.
But that's happened elsewhere, isn't it? Like Laura Croft and Lara.
Yeah.
Well, we're friends, but with Daniel Craig, where he's basically being paid to
with the original Tomb Raider movies. Yeah.
Whereas she wants to put it in a museum, he's happy to get money just to give it to whoever's.
Completely forgot Daniel Craig was in that movie. Yeah. But I think he wants to emulate him because he has that. When he puts that Federer on his head, he's seeing it's almost like a father figure, isn't it?
Yeah.
Saying, "Well done, kid." He sort of wants to emulate that. I think.
Yeah, but that was the guy only moments before he was running away from. Thinking.
Yeah, but he wasn't doing anything particularly violent, wasn't he? He wasn't like a bad guy, He wasn't like one of the Nazis or anything like that. He was just doing it as a job.
Yeah,
he's not an antagonist.
Yeah, I guess the aims were the same because it's not like River Phoenix, who is young Harrison Ford. It's not like he's saying that should be left alone. It's sacred. Yeah, he's actually thinking of the same aim.
Yeah,
belongs
absolutely.
in a museum.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I was also going to say, is it just me that thinks River Phoenix has an incredibly 80s haircut?
There's a boy band curtains there, isn't it?
Yes.
And he even has to part his curtains to see the lion when he falls into that.
Yeah. I'm not sure many people in the 30s.
Did you have curtains?
Yes.
Of course.
I wasn't in the 30s. I was non-existent in the 30s. So.
Yeah, you were just a glint in the milkman's eye, weren't you?
River Phoenix worked with Harrison Ford in Mosquito Coast, didn't he?
He played his son there, didn't he? Yeah.
Because the other thing we talked about in the film was on top of the train when they're fighting, and one of the gang is on top of Phoenix trying to knife him. That's Brad Gregg, and he's the one who were brothers. They were brothers. Phoenix and Gregg were brothers in Stand By Me.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
A little fact on that circus train sequence. When he goes into the magic carriage where he gets in the box to escape, did you know it was called Dr. Fantasy's like Magic Emporium or something like that?
Yes.
Do you know who Dr. Fantasy is?
No.
It's the magician alter ego of Frank Marshall, the producer.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah.
There you go. Wow.
Because I know on set, because I read this somewhere, but although my facts have been incorrect before, because the steam locomotive is obviously very, very noisy, and the directions in terms of the first assistant director, and when they were trying to communicate with some of the crew, they actually used the giraffes' heads to shake to say yes or no in terms of their understanding of what had been asked to be done. Allegedly, I must put that in, because they couldn't actually hear each other in terms of the noise.
So they do what?
They use the two giraffe heads are sticking out the train.
Sure.
They basically used if they were given a direction and the train was moving,
the
giraffe heads sort of would nod to say yes, they understood or they were doing it, or shaking. Allegedly.
So wait, hold on.
Check the books.
They would ask the giraffes.
No,
they know what they're doing, and they go, "Yeah, I know what I'm doing."
Yeah. No, they were asked. They were using the giraffes as a way of identifying they'd understood an instruction from the first assistant director.
Okay.
Because they couldn't hear because of the noise of the train.
Okay, so they said, "Do you understand?" And then instead of going yes, they'd manually nod a giraffe's head.
Nod a giraffe's head. Yeah. A fact.
This can't be true.
I'm a bit sceptical. I hate to be a bit Indiana Jones about this, but yeah, I'm a bit cynical.
Fact.
Okay, sure. You heard it here first.
Perhaps we could get Ian Freer to give us a call.
In another thing that didn't happen, we did see in that train sequence the rhinoceros that may have transferred from the original the script of Indiana Jones and the Monkey King.
Yes.
As it was in one of the carriages. I don't know if they put that in there especially. He didn't ride it in this one, but it did...
But yes, it's perfectly possible. That's where the idea came from.
But I really like that opening sequence.
Yeah.
Also, it echoes... All Indiana Jones films now have had the Paramount logo, which are then faded out into either a mountain or a hill-like structure or something like that, which is a nice little bit of continuity and a bit of poetry, which I quite like.
Yes, very nice.
But that's why that whole sequence, I think it perfectly encapsulate why they should have stopped at 3, because this one has all those callbacks. It wraps everything up in a neat little story. There's a satisfying conclusion at the end, and there's a clear arc and an end destination. It didn't need to go on beyond that, because now there's another entry and there's going to be another entry in there as well. It just makes it feel less satisfying. It doesn't tie everything all up in a nice little trilogy.
It does. If I'm going to be really brutal about the fourth one, it feels like, because that one does feel so complete, it feels to some extent that the fourth one was done just for the money.
Yeah.
I'm afraid so.
Yeah.
What's he saying?
Is the fourth one your favourite? I'm so sorry.
No.
I still refuse to accept that there is a fourth one. And did you notice in that same sequence you were talking about where Indiana Jones goes back to see his father for the first time, we see the Alaskan Malamute that you mentioned yourself?
Yes. That didn't escape my attention. So
Venice.
So yes, in Venice, I mean, Harrison Ford has literally just looked at the ground, broken through that little wall, and it's like, it's petroleum. And what's the next thing?
Why is it petroleum?
What's the next thing he did?
Yeah, he lights
a flaming torch.
Hasn't he been on a health and safety course?
Have you noticed? Did you notice when you said that? Watching as a kid, you completely accept this.
Yeah.
But when you saw loads of little embers just falling off it the entire time.
Yeah. The whole time.
Was it ever explained why? Why is it petroleum?
It's literally just so it can be a bit more dangerous, isn't it? That when they can set it on fire.
But why would it be petrol?
I don't know.
Why wouldn't it be oil or
fossil fuels are developed deep underground?
Yes, but it's oil, isn't it? Not petrol. Yeah.
Yeah, crude oil.
Famous fracking place in Venice.
Sponsored by Esso.
Yeah.
It's very odd.
It's very odd.
But apparently Lucas basically asked that there be 1,000 disease-free grey rats.
He specified disease-free, did he?
He did. Yeah. No, apparently they did. Yeah.
Yeah, they bred their own rats for that sequence.
Yeah.
And then they said, "Do you understand?" And the rats nodded. Is that what happened?
5,000 rats apparently. Sorry, I misunderstood.
So they all bred their own rats at Elstree Studios in North London, and
they wouldn't have done it at the studios, would they?
Well, they bred them for this. That was all filmed for the studios.
I think you've got to get your facts right.
They got rat insurance.
Did they really?
Yeah, they had rat insurance.
Wow.
So that if over 1,000 rats were lost, or they died or whatever, that the insurance company would pay out to replace those rats, because it took a while for them to breed that many.
Wow.
And when everything exploded, they used the little mechanical rats, didn't they? Yeah. So no rats were intentionally harmed at all, because Spielberg's done tortured the female leads in each of the movies quite badly, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Because in the first one it's snakes, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the second one it's bugs, and this one it's rats. Which one would you prefer? if you had to do one of those scenes?
I'd take the snakes, I think.
You do the snakes?
Yeah.
I'd rats, definitely.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. What would you have done?
Probably snakes.
The snakes.
I feel like the snakes are more controllable. If it came at you, I feel like I could stop it more.
Yes, but they filmed with a cobra in Raiders of the Lost Ark, didn't they?
Yeah.
It was behind glass, but yeah. Okay, I'd do rats, definitely, though. Should we talk about the villains for a little bit?
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the things that was lacking in Temple of Doom is a clear, a well-rounded bad guy. Whereas with Donovan, we get someone who's got a motivation, is a bit despicable, and has you've got some other antagonists around him as well, with Elsa and the other Nazi commander.
Yeah. I mean, don't forget, like, the villain in Temple of Doom is definitely despicable.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't. I wasn't saying I'm sympathising with him and his child slaves.
He tears that guy's heart out and stuff, but you just don't really know why. It's this ritual, but you don't really know what it's aiming, what the final aim is of it. Exactly, it's just sort of a sacrifice for the sake of it. Yeah, but no, you get real. I think the villains in this are actually quite well developed, and I think that's a problem with a lot of action adventure movies. Is you just have a very one note villain, but with here you've got Donovan and you've also got Elsa, and who I think is really really good as a female antagonist. Yeah, plays it really really well, and I like the fact that you declare, because at the start you don't know who the bad guys are at all. It's only actually until halfway through that. When he's in that castle.
Well, I knew because I saw it last night.
It was only until halfway through that they actually declare themselves, and then that's when the plot really kicks forward.
Yeah.
And I think it actually improves quite a lot at that point, because that's when you get introduced to Sean Connery, and that's where you know where the plot's going.
Yeah.
The first half of it, you don't really know where things are going.
No.
And I think it's a bit slower because of that. And the dialogue isn't as good, or it's not as fun. And then Sean Connery comes in, and then it becomes very funny actually. It becomes like a comedy. Yeah. Would you say classify this as like a comedy adventure? Or? Yeah. I think it's probably Spielberg's funniest film. It could be, yeah. Yeah. There are some real genuine laughs out. Yeah.
Well, Jaws is funny.
Is it funny? Well, it's not meant to be.
All right.
I love that line, which you said was ad-libbed, when Sean Connery says, it's like, oh, how did you know she was a Nazi? Well, she talks in her sleep.
She talks in her sleep. But when you see the film, he asks twice, as if they filmed it and then, we better put that in.
Yeah.
And then it's as if they asked him again just to run it so it looked like it was... Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know why he asked him twice, but yeah, it was funny. Apparently it was an ad-lib.
I like that.
There are some absolutely brilliant accents while you're doing it. Harrison Ford's Scottish accent is
it's amazing.
Flawless.
Amazing.
We've gone and caught a sniffle.
I'm here to see the tapestries. Yeah, that's a great scene. At least the guy who he's saying it to acknowledges that it's absolutely terrible. Yeah, exactly. Imagine if they tried to just pass it off as being... Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. It's probably a question for you, Joey. How do you think how do you think Spielberg's sort of directorial flair has changed throughout the Indiana Jones movies? Was there anything that you noticed that Spielberg has started to do more often, or anything he started to learn? I feel like he's really got his pacing down really well now. This is a really well-paced movie, isn't it? So I've mentioned to you before that I think sometimes there's a sense that like the technicians can do their job. That's why you have specialists in certain areas. That's why you have the head of the camera department and things. But overall, like the job of the director, it could be said, is to sort of get the tone of the scenes, the roller coaster that you're on, the fast and the slow bits. Yeah. And so knowing, for example, that the motorcycle chase was something they added because they looked at the whole thing and previewed it, and they said, oh, it's a bit slow. We'll go back and we'll add that.
it was interesting trying to think what the film would be like without that, and I would think it would still work, to be honest.
I think it
It's
would
only
do.
an extra couple of minutes that they've added
But
there
they
to
would
put a
have
bit
had
more energy on there.
But it would have to have added something to get them to Berlin, having escaped the castle. You know.
That's true. You're right. I think it probably would have, because I read about that beforehand and then obviously watched the film with that in mind. But the scene beforehand is a scene where they're escaping from the castle, and that's when they accidentally burn down that room. And you get that sort of comedy scene, which is like in a Scooby-Doo thing when they're going around that fireplace, which rotates 360. And that sort of is like a fun little action scene. And it's very quick, it's very breezy, it's very funny. I think it still would have worked. I don't think... Well, you're right. Did they necessarily need that? I don't know. But it still really works.
Yeah, it still really works. Yeah, fits in flawlessly, doesn't it? And it just adds to this sense that it's really well paced.
Yeah.
Just shows how the fast service has improved over the decades, doesn't
Absolutely, yeah. I read something about how they did that. I think they had like these fire cylinders, didn't they?
Yes.
That they
it's like a tube.
Yeah.
That's got a little slit in it.
Yeah.
Which is sort of like a bit like your gas hob on your cooker. Yeah. But in a big straight line rather than a round thing. And then you can turn the gas on and it lights in a line, and you put that below the camera, and it looks like it's really close to the people.
Yeah,
and then use a long lens.
Yeah, and then and then it looks like the room's on fire. You turn it off, and then start the scene again.
Brilliant.
Yeah, but with that added scene, which you mentioned, so that's the motorcycle scene as they're escaping from the castle.
Yeah,
that was all filmed, like you said, post production, and that was filmed on Skywalker Ranch, which is George Lucas's private California abode, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and if we didn't have that scene, we wouldn't have got those interactions between Sean Connery and Harrison Ford. I love that look that Sean Connery gives him as he's like just killed that man by sticking the joust into his the wheels. Yeah. He goes flying, and he looks really pleased with himself and just gets that disapproving look from his father.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It's great, and that's the beauty of this, is that a lot of the moments and a lot of the funny moments and a lot of the chemistry is just from looks. It's just from the acting and the chemistry between the two.
Yeah. And then what else I noticed is there's a few David Lean references, because we've mentioned before that he loves David Lean and things. I mean, to the extent that he uses Petra, that building which is carved into the cliff face in Jordan, because that's in Lawrence of Arabia.
Yes, that's true.
I can't remember which David Lean film it is. I think it's Lawrence of Arabia again, where it's almost echoed, where, you know, that final shot of them on horses into the sunset and stuff. I'm pretty sure that happens in Lawrence of Arabia too.
Yeah, I think so. I mentioned in Temple of Doom that there was an actor who played one of the, big Sherpas, and there's also the guy in Raiders of the Lost Ark who gets mashed up by that propeller.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And he's in this one as well as a Gestapo officer.
Oh,
and
right.
I found out his name. He's called Pat Roach.
Pat Roach.
I will post some pictures.
Okay, cool.
Allegedly, Ronald Lacey, who was in the first one, Raiders, who was the Gestapo guy, he plays a cameo of Himmler on the stage at the Nazi rally.
Todt, the one whose face melts. So he plays Himmler, does he?
He does, yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Stage, yeah.
Do you know who plays Hitler? He's uncredited in this.
No, I don't recognise him.
He also plays the evil Mr. Bronson in Grange Hill.
Michael Sheard.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because at the Nazi rally, apparently one of the costume guys found loads of Second World War.
Just in Oxfam. I'll give it to you for £2.
These Nazi uniforms go.
Yeah. No one wants them. I don't know why.
Anyway, so he found lots of authentic Second World War costumes.
Where did he find them?
I don't know.
Okay. Imagine if it wasn't Oxfam.
Exactly.
Can I have these? What are you using them for? Never mind. Just having a book burning.
Don't judge.
Shall we talk about the final scene? Shall we talk about the getting the Grail and the tasks?
Yes.
Themselves. How do you think they sort of held up today? Do you think it works as an action scene? Do you think it works as a...
It does.
Because it seems like, I think it probably started from this film, but it does seem like it's something we do see quite a lot. They get to the final, MacGuffin place where it is, and they have to have tasks or puzzles to solve in order to get to the...
But I didn't really start with this film. I mean, that's very ancient...
Actually, probably started with the serials, didn't it?
No, like the Road of Trials is an ancient mythological thing. So like George Lucas uses Joseph Campbell. It's a model. It's called the monomyth.
What is it? So
the mythological structure, basically.
Okay, so it's the structure that classic myths use, like Greek and Roman stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And Lucas has always been big into this.
Okay.
The problem I always have with these things in all of those types of films is, my goodness, that rope held up well for 700 years.
2,000 years ago. Yeah.
Or I thought about things like, you have to bow before God because you've got those spinning blades. It's like, well, what motor is that attached to?
Yeah, exactly. There's just some guy.
Yeah. Or they've got some servos underneath, like...
Yeah.
Or is it plugged in?
Yeah, but the difficult thing about that clue is, yes, so the clue is you kneel and it stops. But then there's another one that comes up from the ground. So the clue isn't kneel and then roll forward.
Yeah.
It's just kneel. So I don't understand how he knew that he should roll forward.
Yeah, that's true.
And the soldiers being thick.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, his head came
off.
Oh, I'll stand up.
I'm going to stand up. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to do exactly the same thing again.
And then when he steps on the J instead of the I and he falls through, because he's spelling out Jehovah, isn't he?
Yeah.
When you have the shot from below, there are so many other bricks which haven't got any floor attached to them.
That he's using to pull himself back up.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're using the other stuff that's clearly structurally unsound.
Yeah. Now you've made one hole, the whole thing is just going to crack and you're going to fall no matter what.
Yeah.
Defies physics, Mr. Jones. I have to admit that watching this, in those final moments, we all had a very big laugh. Shall I retell the story?
Go for it, yeah.
So, you have the moment where Donovan lets Elsa pick which grail to drink from. And so he goes over to, presumably it's a font, it's a little body of water, and he puts the grail that she's chosen for him into the water. Firstly, Luke said, how long do you think that water's been there? Is that like 700-year-old water? And I was like, well, you never know, it might be his B-day. And then Tim said, well... the tap that you want is actually over there.
You chose poorly. You should have gone for the tap.
Yeah, there you go. It wasn't the curse that got Donovan, it was dysentery.
That's right, it was just very, very quick dysentery.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the visual effects? So I remember talking about this in our very first introduction episode, that there's Spielberg moments which have just haunted my nightmares.
Yeah.
And we talked about some of the Raiders, and this is one, watching it again, that I remember many nightmares from. I think this was actually the first Indiana Jones film I watched. I think I watched Last Crusade first. But that scene when Walter slow ages over the course of 20 seconds or so, it really haunts my nightmares. And the effects are actually really, really well done, aren't they? And they still actually hold up today, don't they? Much better than the Raiders of the Lost Ark ones.
It's when his eyes drop back into his head.
Yeah.
We've all had those nights.
So it was all done in a single take, because it was sort of a first in effects, because it was completely composited with a computer and then scanned to film. So they used various puppets of Donovan at different stages of his demise, and then that was all scanned onto film. So it was actually all done in a continuous take, which was quite impressive.
Yeah, digital morphing.
Morphing, yeah, exactly. And that was the first time that had been used on film. So Spielberg, this is what he's starting to already use cutting edge visual effects, which we'll start to see more of when it comes to Jurassic Park in just 4 years' time.
Yeah.
The important thing which we can say now is like he gets the balance right in this film between the amount of special effects he needs and doing stuff for real. I think the special effects don't get in the way.
They don't, do they? No.
In the way the fourth one is just that all feels like a special effect.
Yeah. Most of it, it feels palpable, doesn't it?
It does.
Feels like, you're there.
But the good thing about that is, like, it makes the danger feel so much more real.
Yes.
So, like, there's a lot of things going over cliffs, like the tank going over the cliff or whatever. It feels like there's real danger there.
Because it is, you're right. Because it's quite nice, because when the tank actually falls off. You're watching a miniature tank fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
And you can see like a puppet body as well, like being crushed. But because it's a real physical, palpable thing that's going on, and it's not doing something stupid like 3 backflips and then exploding immediately as it hits the ground, because it's going over the cliff. And that reminded me very much of the end of Duel, actually.
Yes.
Going over that cliff. That's a very similar shot. It feels like, there's more stakes, isn't there?
Yeah.
That there's real consequences of people's
definitely.
actions. This is also the first year in which Spielberg he's done it a few times now, releases 2 movies in 1 year, because he does this and he does the film we're next going to speak about, Always, at the same time.
Oh right, yeah.
And he's done that in
Dreyfuss.
with Richard Dreyfuss, and then he did that in '93 with Jurassic Park and Schindler's List. They're always very different films. They're always for very different audiences. You'd never do 2 big blockbusters in the year. You do one lower budget, more intimate one, and then you do that you could probably do in between the post-production and the release, or in between your filming and your post-production. I think that's what he's done. I know we said that a few of us think this is the best. Well, we didn't ask you, Dad. How do you think this ranks compared to the other Indiana Jones movies?
Because you saw it in a different order. So I saw Raiders for the first time.
Yeah.
So it was
that was your Indiana Jones. Oh, actually, one thing that was interesting. So Michael Crichton had also, the guy who wrote Jurassic Park, had also pitched his idea of another novel that he made as being a potential Indiana Jones movie, and that was Congo. Did you ever see?
I did see Congo.
Congo ended up coming out in the mid-90s or so. So he was trying to convert his film Congo, because he was trying to make it with Brian De Palma, but because it wasn't going to work out, he thought, let's make it as an Indiana Jones episode. But the film, and I think there's a character in there who's a gorilla who has like a translating system on his back, and
it's not an Andy Serkis though. I mean, because it's terrible.
And he thought he would be a gorilla which could translate or speak English via a computer, would be a great little sidekick for Indiana Jones.
Wow,
which
that's a stretch.
Exactly, right. So eventually that didn't work out, and Congo was eventually released and directed by Frank Marshall. In 1995, who is the producer, and apparently I've not seen it, but there is a baby gorilla with a computer on its back.
I mean, some of the casting didn't quite work, but in my opinion.
And that ended up being nominated for 7 Razzies.
Oh, really?
It did, yes. So it didn't do very well. I think it came out in 1995. But yeah, Congo could have been an Indiana Jones film.
Because with Phoenix, River Phoenix, he was actually asked to be in the TV series, the Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Well, yes, yeah.
And he refused because he didn't want to go back to TV.
Yeah.
And look at where we are now.
Yes.
In terms of Netflix. And
he's dead.
That's where I thought you were going. And where is he now? Awkward.
Let me rephrase
really appropriate, Dad. On that note, shall we finish things up?
Yes, let's do it.
Thank you for joining us, as always. Tune in next Thursday, when the next episode comes out, which is going to be Always.
I haven't seen Always. Have you?
I've never seen Always either. Have you seen Always?
I have.
What do you think?
It's okay.
So yeah, we'll be back then. So you can follow us on Twitter at Big Boat Podcasts, or on Instagram at The Bigger Boat Podcast.
You can also email us on thebiggerboatpodcast@gmail.com.
So we've also got, if you keep following us on Twitter, we'll have a Twitter poll where we try and find out what your favourite Spielberg movie is. So make sure you look out for those. Every couple of days there'll be a new one where you can vote for your favourite. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.